going, everybody? It's Sam here, and welcome back to Morbid Vale. We apologize for the late upload, as we decided to take some time out to brainstorm and begin recording content for future videos. We'd also like to give you a brief rundown of our schedule from now until August 31st. We've already done 3 Skyrim character builds, and this is our 4th. After this, we will do 3 Fallout 4 builds, and we will delve into some of our other content, including DIYs, morbid history, horror, movie reviews, and some fan theories here and there regarding other pop culture media, such as the new Batman movie. If you haven't seen our last character build, click the link above to view it. But now, let's get to the reason why you came here today, and introduce you to the Dragon Lord. Our story begins in the once beautiful city of Markarth that was unfortunately tainted by just one family. The Silverbloods were cruel and cunning and did whatever they pleased to obtain more wealth and power for themselves. However, one of their children, Sigurd Silverblood, was not cruel, nor did he care for wealth. All he cared for was his craft and the one who taught it to him. From a very young age, Sigurd was taught by an old orc warrior and smith how to craft some of the most beautiful weapons and armor in all of Tamriel. In addition, the old orc taught him that honor and family were the only real wealth anyone could ever ask for. However, Sigurd did not love his family, as he couldn't stomach their insatiable greed and lust for power. To him, this old orc was his only real family. When he was 14 years old, Sigurd abandoned his family dinner with the Jarl to take care of the old orc, who was bedridden and near death. As Sigurd sat beside the orc, dabbing his wrinkled old forehead with a cold rag, the door to the home was kicked down. Sigurd quickly stood up and grabbed the orc's smithing hammer and took a fighting stance. The guards who had barged in arrested Sigurd and took the old orc away. Sigurd's own mother, enraged by his neglect and disdain for their family, ordered her son to be sent into Sidna mine. As Sigurd was being escorted to the mine, one of the guards drew his sword and killed the other. He told Sigurd to run to Cyrodiil to join the Imperial army. That would be the only way the Silverbloods could never lay a hand on him ever again. Sigurd did as he was told and ran as fast as he could until he reached the center of Cyrodiil itself. For the next 15 years, Sigurd fought in the Imperial army, honing his skills and becoming one of the best soldiers that the Empire had. However, not all were pleased to have Sigurd serving alongside them. One day, as they patrolled an area near Skyrim, Sigurd was attacked by his own men, under the orders of his trusted second-in-command, Bjorn, who had been serving the Empire 5 years longer than Sigurd and was enraged that he had been passed over for the legate promotion. When he awoke, Sigurd found himself chained to a wall in a ruined watchtower. For the next 4 years, Sigurd remained hanging from those shackles, only given stale bread and sour wine to drink once every day. Sigurd never gave up hope that he would one day be freed, but anger and vengeance slowly grew in his heart. Then one day, when the guards weren't around, a wanderer stumbled upon the ruins, and the malnourished Sigurd chained to its walls. The stranger helped Sigurd down and took him to his home and nursed him back to health. Over the next year, Sigurd slowly began to build up and relearn his skills. Then, while hunting in the woods, he stumbled upon something unexpected. Sigurd saw a man in a bear cloak sneaking through the woods, but he recognized the man's face immediately and knew that it was his former second-in-command. In a flash, the trauma returned, and filled with rage, Sigurd attacked and ripped the warhammer from Bjorn's hands and proceeded to smash his skull in. Quickly, warriors in blue rushed at Sigurd, screaming and waving around their weapons. Though he was outnumbered, Sigurd gripped the warhammer tightly and prepared to fight. But all attention was diverted away from Sigurd when another crowd of war screams came from the opposite end of the forest. Imperials came through the clearing, and the two groups focused on one another. Sigurd, who was caught off guard by the sudden change of focus from the blue-cloaked warriors, didn't know who he could trust, so he began fending off attacks from both sides. Then all of a sudden, a thunderous noise boomed from the woods, and Sigurd was knocked against a tree, rendering him unconscious. He awoke days later on a cart with strangers, some of which he had seen on that battlefield, and after nearly being beheaded, he escaped with the aid of an imperial soldier named Hadvar, who took pity on the once proud imperial legate. Not long after, Sigurd discovered his divine nature, that he was in fact dragonborn, and by his birthright was destined to become the Emperor of Tamriel. But he couldn't let his homeland remain in a sea of devastating turmoil, especially with the dragons burning the earth and skies. He had seen enough horror and wickedness and cruelty to last a lifetime. He swore that he would bring peace to Tamriel under his reign as Emperor by any means necessary, and he would start first with bringing peace to his homeland of Skyrim. Now let's talk about gameplay. After discovering his dragonborn powers, Sigurd takes up the title of the Dragon Lord. He is an incredibly strong warrior who desires to bring an eternal peace to Tamriel. However, he finds it difficult to persuade others to his way of thinking, and thus he eventually takes some drastic measures that border the line of hero and monster. He helps those in need without asking for anything in return, unless of course they have something he desperately needs. However, his years of imprisonment and torture have made him a better judge of character, so he will not be blind and help the deceptive degenerates in their plans. He prefers to talk with others before resorting to violence, but knows that both men and Mer are treacherous and aggressive, and sometimes justice must be served by the sword. Through his travels, the Dragon Lord stumbles upon an orc tribe, and after helping them, becomes a member of the orc community. He goes between all these tribes, helping them however he can. Eventually, he comes across one tribe that seems to have lost the blessing of the mighty Malakath. Though he is considered a Daedric prince by most, Sigurd sees Malakath as more of a war god, one that the Thalmor do not persecute as they do Talos. He helps the orc tribe, but when the time comes, he slays the chief on behalf of Malakath, who returns Sigurd's honor and brutality by gifting him the mighty hammer Balendrung. Once he has mastered many of his fighting skills, the Dragon Lord joins the companions and eventually becomes their harbinger, helping Skyrim greatly in their troubles. He also obtains great power from the College of Winterhold and learns every word of power he can from the Greybeards, but it's still not enough for him to bring an everlasting peace. The Dragon Lord joins the Imperial Army as he knows their tactics and routines and recognizes the power-hungry gaze in Ulfric's eyes. As their ally, he brings the Empire closer to victory in Skyrim, but the threat of the dragons cannot be ignored. He builds up the Blades with strong, capable warriors who he knows are honest and loyal to him. He slays many dragons, but he still cannot find the fiend known as Alduin. He sees that he cannot set out to destroy Alduin while the war continues, so he convinces the Greybeards to host a meeting for the Civil War leaders. There, the Dragon Lord shows how great of a leader he truly is, giving enough to both sides that neither feels cheated or betrayed in their bargain. The Dragon Lord successfully forges an uneasy truce between the warring sides, then immediately prepares to destroy Alduin. However, there is one last course of action that he cannot ignore. While Parthenax taught him how to focus the power of his Thu'um, the old grey dragon's name does suggest that he is merely waiting for Alduin to die, so that he can take up the mantle of King of the Dova. Even though Parthenax claims to have turned from his wicked ways, he admits to struggling to repress his brutal nature. He killed hundreds, if not thousands, of innocent men and Mer just for amusement and to show off his own power. After much meditation and praying to the divines, the Dragon Lord makes the hardest decision and kills Parthenax. He finally acquires justice for the forgotten dead and ensures that the dragons will never have another cruel leader like Alduin. After this, he knows that he cannot return to the Greybeards, and so he leaves the mountain, the doors to High Hrothgar unlocked, and the Greybeards left isolated to mourn their loss. After the Dragon Lord defeats Alduin, the war starts up once more. He returns to battle, and as he fights side by side with General Tullius, the Stormcloaks begin to fall. The Dragon Lord refuses to fuel Ulfric's ego in death, and allows General Tullius to make the final blow. However, he feels that there still isn't a true peace. He sets out to aid the Dawnguard, but once he sees the power that Harkon wields, he knows that he could harness this curse for good. He sides with the Volkihar vampires, only so he can learn their secrets and use them for good. He can barely stomach the horrors that the vampires commit within the castle, such as feeding upon the brainwashed thralls. However, he does understand that vampires need blood to survive, and since they are keeping their thralls alive and in healthy condition, he doesn't make too much of a fuss. He destroys Harkon and takes control of the Volkihar clan, claiming Ariel's bow as a divine gift, which he uses to the best of his abilities. He works hard to slowly turn the minds of the vampires away from domination, and towards bringing peace between the vampire and mortal races. The Dawnguard make this incredibly difficult, however, so the Dragon Lord assembles his army and lays siege to Fort Dawnguard. He sees how much power he wields as the vampire clan's lord, and knows that he needs to keep himself in check, lest he become a true monster. He continuously encounters strange cultists, and eventually decides to see why someone wants him dead. Upon arriving on Solstheim, the Dragon Lord quickly senses how wrong the whole place feels. He encounters the mighty Miraak and Apocrypha, but the teleportation combined with the Dragon Priest's shock spell weakens and disorients the Dragon Lord greatly. He sets out and obtains great power from Hermaeus Mora and uses it to defeat the arrogant Miraak. Afterwards, he proceeds to help the people of Solstheim, especially the Skalds, who had lost their leader to Herma Mora. Alright, we've talked a lot about the long road to eventual peace, and the many dark grey areas the Dragon Lord strides through to achieve it. But enough of that for now, and let's get to the brutal action you're all accustomed to. When facing enemies at a distance, the Dragon Lord will use Ariel's bow to bombard enemies with sun-hallowed arrows, but will use the firebolt spell if civilians are near his target. If he does run out of sun-hallowed arrows, the Dragon Lord will resort to using magic, such as powerful fireball spells and other elemental spells depending on his enemy's weaknesses. If he is undetected, or has too many enemies bombarding him at once, the Dragon Lord will assert his will within the minds and hearts of his enemies, forcing them to turn against one another or cease their violent attacks altogether. In close combat, the Dragon Lord uses the mighty warhammer known as Volendrung to crush the ribs and skulls of the wicked degenerates of Skyrim. Since each hit gives him more stamina, the Dragon Lord prefers using power attacks against his enemies, causing the most damage possible in the least amount of time. As stated earlier, the Dragon Lord prefers peace over violence, and this extends not only to man and mer, but also to the beasts as well, including the dragons. He will use shouts such as Kind's Peace to soothe the savage nature of the average beast, and bend will to force an aggressive dragon to submit. He will ride upon the back of a dragon to reach certain vantage points, or to attack wicked individuals such as the cult of Boethia. But should the dragon ever turn against him, or attack an innocent, the Dragon Lord will not hesitate to bring down the mighty beast. During the night, if the Dragon Lord needs more power in combat, he will transform into a vampire lord. He never does this in the view of civilians or allies, as they will not understand why he has taken such a curse upon himself. In this form, he uses Drain Life and Vampiric Grip to toss his enemies off of cliffs. However, he typically does not need to take on the Vampire Lord form for any fight, and only does so when he gives into the temptation of power offered by the vampiric blood. Despite this, he makes sure that the power does not go to his head, and that he does not give into the dark nature and attack the innocent. Now, we've talked about the extensive role-playing aspects of the Dragon Lord, and have covered how he deals with brutal conflicts, so let's talk about how he defends himself. The Dragon Lord wears the Ethereal Crown, a unique and miraculous item made of the legendary substance known as Ethereum. It symbolizes his power and authority, and with it he harnesses the power of the Atronach and Lord Stones. During his time in the Imperial Army years earlier, the Dragon Lord constructed a marvelous set of armor that he never thought he'd see again. When he returns to fight for the Empire, he is told of a champion battle near Whiterun, and without hesitation he goes to sign up for the fight. He's surprised to see the old armor he crafted being used as the champion armor set. The Dragon Lord dons the armor, wearing it for every adventure and battle he faces. The enchantments on the armor boost his elemental resistance, his melee damage, and his healing rate. Ariel's Breath is the name of the amulet worn by the Dragon Lord at all times. It gives him an unparalleled connection to his dragonborn blood, allowing him to harness and focus the power of Aetherius into potent magical attacks. It also uses the ethereal powers to continuously heal him when in combat. Oathbound is the golden diamond ring worn by the Dragon Lord. So long as he wears the ring, he possesses raw strength of a dove. Volendrung is the mighty warhammer wielded by the Dragon Lord. It was gifted to him after he performed a task for the Daedric prince Malakath, which did involve some bloodshed. Ariel's Bow is a divine artifact that the Dragon Lord uses to cleanse the land of Skyrim from the most wicked of foes. He obtained it after defeating an ancient Falmer vampire who sought to destroy the sun. Now let's go over the perks and stats for the Dragon Lord. Having trained hard and been through many battles, it should be no surprise that the Dragon Lord has mastered nearly every combat skill. He's just as skilled with a two-handed weapon as he is with a bow. He uses heavy armor in combat as it absorbs far more damage than light armor. He's also learned many skills when it comes to blocking and can even dodge some of the strongest of attacks. The Dragon Lord has also mastered many destruction and illusion spells as well as their skills to defeat the most deadly of foes. The Dragon Lord uses his knowledge of smithing and enchanting to further enhance his weapons and armor, giving him more of a boost in combat. In addition to his strengthened armor, the skills in the alteration and restoration schools give the Dragon Lord a better edge in combat. Despite being a terrifying beast on the battlefield, the Dragon Lord is also very good with his words, and uses his silver tongue to great effectiveness, convincing and taming others, no matter how savage they may be. The Dragon Lord faces all sorts of enemies on a daily basis, and has worked hard to create some of the most effective power combinations to deal with these enemies. Roar of Peace is the most peaceful of the Dragon Lord's powers. He becomes ethereal and harnesses his power into a potent harmony spell that affects everyone around him, causing them to lose the will to fight and become docile and listen to reason. Son of Akatosh is a power combination where the Dragon Lord takes on dragon aspect, surrounds himself in a flame cloak, and decimates his enemies using powerful attacks with Volendrung. Dragon Lord is the name of the most potent of the Dragon Lord's powers. He takes on his dragon aspect, summons a lightning cloak, calls his ally Odahviin, and brutally attacks his enemies with savage strikes from Volendrung. While combating his enemies, he unleashes a terrifying battle cry to send his foes running in fear. Dragon Aura is enacted by the Dragon Lord summoning a potent flame cloak, taking on his dragon aspect, and using a combination of Bend Will, Frenzy, and Wall of Flames to decimate his foes. After defeating all of the greatest threats that plagued Skyrim, the Dragon Lord discovered that he had a strong desire that he could no longer ignore. He set out to begin building a family, and started by acquiring the beautiful homestead of Hendraheim by defeating the mighty warrior who was its former owner. From there, he decided to marry the most important woman in his life, his faithful housecarl, Lydia, who had fought alongside him for the last several months. The two got married in Riften in front of all of their closest friends, and decided to settle down for a while. Not long after their marriage, Sigurd ran across two young girls who he felt needed a good home. The first was Sissel, who needed to be freed from her abusive father and sister.
Complain and caterwaul, sleep and eat, useless!
Are you sure? You really wouldn't mind? Yay! Thanks, Mr. Papa. I promise I'll be the best daughter ever. It's everything I could have hoped for. I know it's not much, but I found a few pretty things. They're in the chest in my room. If you see anything you like, please, take it. You've done so much for me.
The second was the young girl named Lucia who lived in Whiterun, homeless, after her aunt and uncle kicked her out and took over her family's farm. Barely 5 years later, Sigurd saw how tightly of a grasp the Thalmor held, and could see the nightmares they would soon bring about. He decided to head to Cyrodiil and become the Emperor, with the support of General Tullius, the Jarls of Skyrim, the Volkihar clan, legions of soldiers, and over a dozen loyal Dova, including Odahviin and Durnevir. With his greatest allies at his back, Sigurd took the dragon throne of Cyrodiil, decimated the power of the Thalmor, and became known to all as the Eternal Dragon. We hope you enjoyed our latest Skyrim build, the Dragon Lord. Thank you all for your support over the last few months, and we'll keep working hard to produce more content for you in the future. If you haven't already, click the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified of our future videos. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you all here next time on The Morbid Vale.